So I'm going to go over the difference between throttle curve and programmed throttle. So throttle curve is a direct one-to-one input, right? So whatever my trigger is doing, the EEC is going to output. So simply enough, this is directly one-to-one. So 10% input, 10% output. Right, I'll update the EEC, show you what that looks like. So you see my trigger. So it follows one-to-one, right? I've got the Castle quick connect down the bottom there. Now, if I go to something like this, now my trigger, if I put any input up to 60%, the ESC is only going to give me 10% output. Right, again, this is not time-based, so whatever your radio is doing, the ESC at exactly that time is going to output this information. So now it's going to stay at 10%. Even though my trigger is going up and down. Now if I go above 50, it's going to jump up. So but again, it's a direct relationship. What is my radio sending, my EEC is going to directly put out. So now if I get rid of the throttle curve and then I go into a programmed throttle, and let's say I'm going to use 2.5 seconds and I want to engage it at 50% throttle, and I'm going to do something like this. So what it's going to do is, as soon as my trigger hits 50%, it's going to ignore the radio and then start following this curve that I've just created. I'll update the EEC. So what we should see is the car will drive normal up until 50%. But if I hit 50% on the ESC, on the radio, the ESC is going to drop down to 10% and then follow that curve, right? So normal, right? So it follows the curve. Now, like from racing instance, you're just going to hit 100% power straight away, and then it's going to go straight into that curve. So again, 100%. But then I can drive it normally, as long as I don't hit 50%. As soon as I go over 50, it goes into that throttle curve. So that's the time-based throttle. So that's your tuning ability, same as what you do in the radios now. So in radio, you would go programmed throttle. In the radio, you would set your speed, your throttle speed, minus 96, minus 97 or 30 or whatever it is in your radio. That creates a speed from 0 input to 100 input. So this works the same. So I'm going to say 2%, and I'm going to put it like a little bit of a tune in. So I'll go something like jump to 40%, hold 40 for a fraction of a second, and then start ramping up. So that's kind of like what a normal radio tune would look like. and it's going to happen over 2 seconds. So I'm just going to, what I'm going to do, I'm going to activate it really early. So I'm going to activate it as soon as my radio hits 30. It's going to activate this curve. So it still gives me a little bit of mucking around. So if I need to drive back, I can drive at 30% throttle and it's not going to activate the curve. So you see, I can drive normal until I hit 30%, and then it's going to jump up and follow that curve. So in racing condition, you're just going to go 100% power. And you can hear it progressing along the throttle curve. Now, what we can also do is now start introducing the start power. So I'm going to say now 60% start power for 100 milliseconds. And what that's going to mean to this curve is it's going to jump to 60% for 100 milliseconds and then follow this curve. So the start power kind of overrides it. So I don't need to build in a start power here. I use the actual ESC start power conditions. So throttle curve still or nothing. Program throttle will update. Like this. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to go 100% throttle, and it's going to activate the start power and then the throttle curve. All right. Now, what we might do is let's add more start power because it's not quite that noticeable. So let's go 80% start power, hold time 200, program throttle, okay. So now you can hear it. So as soon as I hit 100% power, that first blip is the 80% start power, and then it drops and follows the curve. And what we can then look at now we'll have a look at a log. And so that was the last one I just did. So you can see my trigger is 100%. So that black line is my radio input. And this line here, the sort of light blue, that's my ESC output. So even though my radio is just straight to 100%, follows it along, my ESC went to 80%. That's my 80% start power. You'll see it here. That's it holding the 80% start power for 200 milliseconds. This is it now dropping to follow the programmed throttle. So again, my radio is still at 100%. I've not touched anything in the radio, and then now it's following the curve. So that's kind of an idea of how the programmed throttle works with the new Castle Ghost.